Call the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda has to do with the capital projects. And Mr. Kessler, are you going to take us through those?
I am, President Johnson. Thank you so much. I do just, I want to mention a personal matter that might take me away today. We have a family emergency that I might have to leave. We've made contingencies if that does happen, but if it would happen rather suddenly. So if I leave in a rush, Mr. Kubas and Mr. Colling will take over on my behalf. So, having said that, you all should have a document in front of you called the Capital Infrastructure and Improvement Plan. It should look something like this. And what we're going to do today is walk through those projects. We as staff have used the prioritization policy that the City Commission approved about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and prioritize those 2015 projects. You'll notice on this list there's a great many projects. Some of them also include partnership projects, and those are labeled with a PP on them under priority. Those partnership projects are Department of Transportation, State Department of Transportation projects, and or other things that the City of Dickinson is not the primary funding source for. Nevertheless, we do have a portion of funding that is included in those projects, but it is a minority portion. So they are on the list. They are things that we anticipate expending some revenue on. So with that, what I'd like to do is kind of walk you through this this prioritization list, and behind President Johnson there is a graphical representation of the project itself. So Mr. Kubas will help me walk through each of these line items. And you'll notice that the first priority is the annual debt repayment. And if this document goes all the way out to 2018, and you'll notice that the same number or the same event, annual debt repayment, is a project on each. And what we anticipate is at full build out, at full debt load, we will have approximately $8 million in annual payments that we'll have to make in order to make those debt repayments. So we've put that as our highest priority. Secondly then, and we'll start the actual projects now, is the railroad utility crossing modifications. We were notified a few months ago that the BNSF intends to make some changes to their rail line within the City of Dickinson and potentially add another line. What that has made, they made a request that we then put a conduit essentially over all of our utility projects throughout the right-of-way that exist, and that is not the case today. So for every water line and every sewer line that goes underneath those railroad tracks, they want us to extend the conduit that all those lines are within, and it happens in several cases. So we've anticipated $5 million in work just to do that. And that was not on our radar screen a year ago, but unfortunately it is today. So that affects several projects. Mr. Kubas, do you have a number on how many projects that would be?
Mr. Kessler, right now what we're looking at is 4 crossings that potentially could be affected. One right north of the water treatment plant, north of along 3rd Avenue Southwest, then over at 4th Avenue East and 6th Avenue East are the ones we're looking at right now. We're just working out the details with the railroad on whether or not we have to complete these in 15, whether we have to abandon and encase the old lines in grout, and we're working with our consultants to see if we have to do work on these crossings, if we should be upsizing the crossings at this time. So.
Thank you, Mr. Kubas. The next item then, and if you remember our prioritization schedule, it essentially started with things that were mandated either by a federal agency, a state agency, or an agency that has control over, could be the Department of Health with regard to the operations of the wastewater treatment plant. But those are our highest priority. The second then highest priority are things that affect all of the population in Dickinson. So that's why the wastewater treatment plant was such a high priority in past years. And then from there, it essentially goes down to the smaller projects as they affect population. So that's a general way you can look and see why these projects are prioritized the way they are. So the landfill, which of course not only affects Dickinson, but 23 other cities and communities in southwest North Dakota, is the next line item there. We intend to go to loose fill operations instead of a baling facility. Our baler is in need of upgrades and changes. It is not of size anymore to accommodate our growth, and so we're proposing that we abandon that process and go to loose fill. We've actually already started that process, and acquire additional land in and around the existing landfill. We would then also move the scale operations to the landfill site as opposed to the baler site that they're on today. And so all of those operations would be located at the landfill itself. This acquisition of land we don't anticipate to be easy. We are working with the landowner, have been for several months, but that'll be a process to acquire that land. The landfill itself, of course, is filling at a much higher rate than we originally anticipated because of the growth that's happening not only in Dickinson but also in the surrounding regions. As I said, it services about 23 other communities, so it's a regional landfill, not just a city landfill. The next item is the intersection signalization. There's about 10 different areas throughout the community that have met warrants for intersection excuse me intersection signalization. We have erected four-way stops in many of those locations, but not all already. We've also included stop signs now that have illumination on the sign themselves. I've received positive comments from a lot of folks about the use of those signs, but a lot of those places will be replaced by excuse me by traffic signals in 2015. Some of those places that are identified may not be signals, but they could actually be roundabouts or some other form of traffic calming. And maybe Mr. Kubish, would you mind pointing out those 10 locations on the map?
I can. The intersections that have been studied are in green and red. The red ones are signals that are warranted based on the 2014 study. Here we have State Avenue and Fairway. This is State Avenue and 12th, State Avenue and 15th, and then State Avenue and 21st Street. The next warranted signal is at 21st and 6th Avenue West. This signal at 21st and Highway 22 is shown in black as an existing signal, but we did do a study at that intersection as well and have approached the DOT about including left turn phasing, so you'd get a dedicated left turn arrow for the east, west, and south legs of that intersection. Right now there's a left turn arrow for northbound only. The intersection at 10th Avenue East and 21st Street is warranted. This is one of the intersections that Mr. Kessel was referring to that we are looking at a roundabout improvement. 10th Avenue East and Villard warrants a signal. It's another intersection where we're looking at a roundabout improvement potentially. This is 18th Avenue East and the East Business Loop. Right now this one ranked the lowest on our prioritization of these signals that do meet warrants right now. So if one of them had to come off our list for 2015, it might be 18th Avenue East and the East Business Loop. And the last one that met warrants was the signal or the intersection at Highway 22 South and 8th Street South. We get many calls on this intersection, and it does warrant signals. So right now we're working with the DOT on the ones that are along Highway 22 or these two on the business loop. They need to approve those projects and work through the project development. And we have consultants working on the rest of them right now. So we hope to make as many improvements as we can in 2015.
Thank you, Engineer Kubis. The next line item that you have is prioritization number 5, and that's the State Avenue improvements. That would represent the State Avenue from 21st Street west to 40th. This is the location that would go by the new school site for the new middle school site. So it'll eventually start at State Avenue and then traverse west and go just past 30th, which is the interim bypass location. Right now, we're anticipating that that street at full build-out would be a 5-lane section, but we're anticipating the construction initially of the southern 3 lanes, and we may bid as an alternate the other 2 lanes and determine what would be best to construct at the time. If you get good bids, we may go with the full 5, but traffic may not warrant a whole 5-lane section, at least initially. The next is the 21st Street West improvements from State Avenue to 30th Avenue. Oh, I'm sorry, I flipped them over. Yeah. Sorry, I inverted those. So the State Avenue improvements, as you can see on the list there, continues State Avenue north from 21st Street intersection all the way to 40th Street. Sorry, I flipped those around. That street there is important because of the construction of all of the residential in the area and of our public safety center, which is located right where that cursor is, right where the hand is. As you can see, that facility is under construction, and we anticipate completion around the end of July for the public safety center. So it'd be quite nice to have a roadway there that the fire and police could use to get out and access the rest of the transportation network. So number 7 then, since I inadvertently flipped those 2, is the brine facility, a tank farm, material shed, and emulsion tanks. This is a facility that would be located on the campus of the Public Works Building, the newly constructed Public Works Building. We are, in order to recognize all of the lane miles that we're adding into the city because of streets being constructed, including the interim bypass, we are trying to work smarter rather than harder. And part of that, because of our difficult hiring environment, I mean, we've had an average of 1.1 to 1.3 unemployment for about 2 years now, going back to job service records. So hiring is very, very difficult. So we have to find alternate ways of trying to administer a service to our residents that that is as efficient as possible. And the use of brine to clear our streets of water, or excuse me, of ice and snow is one of those things. Brine is used extensively by the DOT, and we anticipate erecting this facility so that we can create brine and use it on the roadway in 2016. We also believe that there may be a market for that brine that could be purchased by Stark County, by the local DOT, and by others in the area. So it would be able to offset some of those costs, certainly not completely, but it would serve as a revenue stream if we're able to do that. We're also adding a place for the buildings and grounds staff. They do not, we're going to try to incorporate, and we'll actually talk about that at tonight's City Commission meeting. The idea is to incorporate all of our Public Works staff under one building. That was the whole point of the Public Works facility. And the buildings and grounds folks do not have a site on that campus as we speak. So the number 8 then is the reuse fill station by Old 10 and 116th. As you know, that location there is just north of the oil refinery that is currently in operations. This potentially could be a site where we would provide reuse water for industrial purposes. That industrial purpose would primarily be for fracking and other oil jobs. And the point would be to try to remove the fill station that's located at the Broadway location today and replace it with this. That Broadway location currently uses potable water, and we'd like to see the industrial use stop its reliance upon potable water and change to this reuse water. This location is tentative. We hope that we'll be a wholesaler to somebody else who would like to create this facility on its own, potentially a little north of there at exit 56 or in that area. But because we have piping that can go, that's already in existence out to that refinery, it makes somewhere along this north-south section of roadway the most advantageous to provide a fill station. The next is 15th Street from 30th to 45th. A portion of this roadway is being constructed as we speak. It is the buffer between the West Ridge and Pinecrest subdivisions, and it is, as you can see by its detail there, it's being constructed for a distance that those two subdivisions are parallel with one another. This project would take it out past out to 45th. We anticipate that 15th Street will become the major east-west corridor for future growth of the city of Dickinson, as opposed to 21st or West Ridge Drive. The next priority is the Patterson Lake Crooked Crane Trail, Phase 1. This is a multi-use trail that would incorporate a fitness component to it, 3 different clusters of exercise equipment to create some synergy between existing uses such as well, there's about 3 different things that exist out there today. A disc golf course, there's access to the water through public access points, and also camping facilities that are all out there. So the fitness trail this phase 1 would be the first phase of a 3-phase approach that would take care of the Crooked Crane Trail as it exists today all around Patterson Lake. It's between a 15 and 17 mile project at its completion. We just presented this morning with Mr. Kramer from the Park Department, or Park and Rec, and we're hoping that the majority of these costs would be paid for through that grant process, the Outdoor Heritage Fund grant process. The application was made for $1 million, just under $1 million, and this first phase is a $1.3 million project. We'll be connecting that to it's part of the master trail plan, and it would be connected then to that master trail plan. The next item is the West Gravity Phase 2. This is from 21st to Interstate. This also would include a bore underneath the interstate. And you can see it's a rather long project, large project, about a $2 million project as we estimate, and it would service the Pinecrest, West Ridge subdivisions. The school, I believe, is gravity fed to the east, so I don't believe that the school would be accessing this line. The next is lift station number 14. This also includes force main on 10th Avenue East and 21st Street. That is one of the locations that Engineer Kubis talked about as a potential roundabout location, and so we need to make sure that those projects work well together. But this lift station takes all of the effluent from Sundance Coves and Sundance Village. There's also some developments that are proposed in between Sundance Coves and 10th Avenue East that this would also facilitate. It takes the mobile home park there, and right now it's full. We can't really do any more development in this area of town because this lift station is at capacity. So that would provide us with some capacity once that improvement is complete. The next is Lift Station 5. This is at 5th Street Southwest. And it also includes, as you can see, some pipe work as well. Currently, our southwest portion of the community has some issues with capacity as well. There's a couple different developers that are working in that area that we have had to ask them to postpone their developments because we just don't have sewer capacity in the area. This would help alleviate some of that those capacity issues and allow development to continue to occur on the south side. The next is a River Drive booster station. As you can see, the booster station is actually located at the top end, at the north end, and it would force water south. It would help with the KLD subdivision and the housing developments that are along that line. We're currently, again, at capacity in that area when it comes to water. So this would help with fire flows and capacity issues that we currently have in this section of the community. The next is our first stormwater project. It's Lamont Stormwater. There it is. It's kind of a little bit hard to see, but that is north of the Hampton Inn, and the water is it's been a difficult area for water completely, and so we're proposing that there be a large retention pond at that location. I believe that's parkland. Is it not, Mr. Kubas?
It is, Mr. Kessel. Well, one thing I'd add with this project, it will include some gravity storm sewer through what was the Houston's 3rd edition, and then it also includes some storm sewer along 14th Street. So since they're all in proximity, they're all working together, I think that project will include some of that gravity main as well.
So could you maybe use your pointer to show the region that would accept where flow will happen into this pond area?
This pond takes the flow all the way from this is Walmart right here, so really from about 26th Street down. It does take some distance into the Diamond Acres or the Houston's 3rd edition, and then the rest of that would tail off to the southeast. So it's a fairly large area, almost completely developed except for this area between the Lamont subdivision and Saks Motors is the only remaining area to be developed. But again, we found that the system's at capacity now, so we've had some localized flooding issues in this new residential subdivision, and our hopes with these 3 areas, the piping over here, the pond, and the piping at 14th, we would alleviate all those problems and allow for the remainder of this to be developed.
Thank you very much. And as I'm walking through, Mr. Zaroff, if you want to jump in and add, please do so as well. So our next project is another water project. It's the east side 500-gallon elevated storage tank. It also includes some piping as well. That tank is proposed to be on the east side of the Public Works building campus, and as you can see, where the pipes would be to connect it to our system. We are undersized in terms of fire flows in that area, and this would help with that issue along with capacity. The next is the Highway 22 landscaping project. This is a project that actually has been around for a little while. It ended up being a little too expensive, and we asked that they go back to bid. They've done that, and so this would add trees and such to the Highway 22 corridor, as you can see, as it's defined there on the page or up on the screen. The next project is the State Avenue Booster Station. you can see the square there, and what it essentially does is what all booster stations do is they elevate the pressures in the line. They allows water then to be moved further distances and provide the pressures we need for fire suppression. Engineer Kubas, maybe you could define the area that would be best served by this booster station.
Well, I'll need to zoom out here a little bit. What this will do, it will allow pressures up into pressure zone 3, which is, you know, some of the Cook's 5th, some of the Cook's 4th, and really a lot of points 40th Street and above. So right now, it'll allow, if I can zoom over here, some of the areas that were annexed into the city several years ago that subsequently were found to be in a pressure zone 3. It'll allow us at least to have the pressures available to get water up there. We'd still need some piping to make that happen, but the pressure would be available with this booster station.
And I think it's important to note that in pressure zone 3, that is an area that's not served by a water tower as we speak. And so until it gets more fully developed, the best way that we've been advised to provide those kinds of pressures and water issues is through a booster station. And once development occurs a little more, then we'll probably see an elevated tank recommendation up in that pressure zone 3. And in fact, in ensuing years, it is on our list to add a tank in pressure zone 3. The next item then is Cook Meadow Hills lighting. This is a special improvement district. When Cook Meadow Hills was approved, there was no lighting. That was it was unfortunately a mistake on our part. We did not catch that. As you can imagine, this was and is a high growth time, and unfortunately we missed it. And so now we have to go back into that subdivision. We have the lighting put in after the fact. It is as a special improvement district. That means that there will be an expense to the landowners themselves, but it is a hazard not to have lighting in that whole subdivision. So the next is Westgate. That also is a special improvement district. And this is a road project. This has also been something we've talked about for some time. That is, Westgate is the roadway there kind of in front of Dickinson Ready Mix. And there's a lot of dust that's created currently in that area because of the industrial nature of the projects and because some of those sites are not paved. So by paving Westgate, that should eliminate some of the dust issues that we receive. Depending on the wind direction, it can actually be quite pronounced. So this is a special improvement district, so there'll be a significant investment on behalf of the property owners in that location. The next one is Fisher East Side. This also is a roadway project. We tried to accommodate this very project in one last year and just weren't able to pull it off. So we're coming back now and would like to see this finished off. That area is now highly developed. It is used to a great degree, and the building that's kind of right in the middle there, I believe, is the KLJ building. It's just to help you get yourself orientated. So it'd be paving those roadways there that are indicated in the black.
For clarification, this street right here is Carroll Street, and it is paved. This is 16th Avenue and 15th Avenue are the remaining streets to be paved. Okay. The next is the design, engineering, and right-of-way acquisition for 2016 projects. Do we have a couple more that I may have? Yeah, that's the next one on the list. And what this is making sure that we are queued up to do 2016 projects. We're finding that right-of-way acquisition and design need to take place the year prior in order to make sure that the project itself can be constructed in the ensuing year.
So there's a great deal of funds. We're proposing between 10 and 12 million dollars to queue those projects up for the following year. So the next project then is water modeling. It's another engineering issue. You will be receiving a presentation at the City Commission tonight on the Water Utility Master Plan, or WUMP as it's called. And then the next is the water supply for Truck Stop 56. This is a major project, and one that is something that we wanted to specifically call out. You'll notice on your agenda, it's actually CIP Project B, City Service Extension to Exit 56. We already have sewer along Old Highway 10 because of our connection to the refinery and eventually to the city of South Hart. They anticipate connecting to that line in July of this coming year. But the development that Westridge represents, that developer has control of the land a half a mile north of the interstate and all the way out to Exit 56. They would like to see the city services at their improvements that they're going to be making at Exit 56. They anticipate a great deal of construction there, and like I say, they would like to see city services. In order to do that, that means that a water line would need to be constructed, and we would anticipate it to look something like this, so that you have looping capabilities. I don't have a dollar amount for you. Did we come up with a ballpark figure, Mr. Kubas?
There was a ballpark figure. I think KLJ will probably talk about it more at the commission meeting tonight. It is part of the Water Utilities Master Plan. We had it broken out into several projects for that master plan. I think inclusively with a storage tank and all the piping here, it could be in excess of $20 million.
Okay, thank you. Exit 56, as it's currently slated, will begin. They plan to open that intersection around November of 2015. It is my understanding that the developers would also see the opening of buildings to the public at that same time. They in fact would hope to have their ribbon cutting the very next day. That time frame for us is challenge. If the city commission sees this as a high priority, I think it would be a challenge for us to actually construct the improvements that you see before you. But certainly we would like to do that if it is a commission priority. Obviously, that kind of a looping system would service more than just Exit 56. And as you'll hear in our next meeting, beginning at 2:30 on the West Dickinson plan, they have a annexation plan that they will outline that does include our higher priority being the extension along the interstate there all the way out to Exit 56, and then a southern annexation that would go down to around the refinery area. So certainly this plan is corroborated through that West Dickinson plan. The next item that we wanted to talk about, and I believe we have these partnerships, is we'll make sure our priorities are the same here. You have sewer for Exit 56.
Mr. Kessel, this was a project that wasn't on the list.
Okay.
The developer of Exit 56 has mentioned that they've been looking at a plan that would be something similar to this, a gravity line to connect to the line you referenced on Highway 10 for their sewer capacity at that Exit 56. So
Okay.
it's not on our list right now, but a project that would need to happen to have city sewer service.
That would also, you could also see then the land development that would happen along that same pathway, much like the sewer line that exists in Old Highway 10. These kinds of infrastructure projects serve as a magnet for future growth. So I would certainly anticipate that we would see requests for development or growth along that pathway. We do have a couple partnership projects that I'd like to mention. The first one is the truck bypass. That is taking that exit 56 and connecting it to a portion of the interim bypass and eventually to Highway 22. There it goes. That project right now is our next state DOT project. This is their next priority upon the conclusion of the intersection 56 project. That is it's an expensive project, around $50 million, and the state is expecting about $5 million from the city of Dickinson when that project takes off. The next partnership project is the overpass at States. That project is currently under design. They expect that they originally anticipated a February bid. I believe that's been pushed back a little bit. Engineering this project has not been easy. They anticipate a 2-year construction window when this finally does kick off. It means that we will have constricted flow during that construction time, but that it will remain open. State Avenue will remain open during that construction phase. There may be a week or two where a closure is necessary, but primarily State Avenue will remain open during the vast majority of the construction time frame. The next is the West Business Loop, and again, this is not a project, this is one we've been advocating for, but not a project that is currently on the DOT's funding list. We would like to see the interim bypass 30th Avenue. We'd like to see that same type of construction extended from the southern boundary of 30th all the way to State Avenue. So that would require the widening of the interstate bridge and of the West Business Loop to a 5-lane section all the way to State Avenue, with the potential for a roundabout at the intersection of Villard Street West and the West Business Loop, right in that area there. We propose that that the same type of lighting would be extended so that it's consistent, and also the same pedestrian access be extended along the West Business Loop and along where the project parameters within that roundabout to help provide access to the Crooked Train Trail that we referenced in an earlier project. And then the next is the State Avenue urban section south of 21st. As you all know, that section of roadway right now is there, but it's not an urbanized section. It is lacking lighting, it's lacking curb and gutter, and what's traditional when it comes to an urban roadway. We'd like to see that roadway as our final project in 2015 turned into an urban section that included lighting, pedestrian access, and then be consistent with the extension that was on the north side. Any further comments? I see, Gary, you look like you have something to say.
If we're in that area, did you want to talk about the sewer to the middle school, since we're right in that area?
Yeah. Recently, the school system has decided that the kind of where that pointer is there, that will be the new site of the middle school. And we certainly support that location because of the improvements that are anticipated at 21st Street to support traffic flow. And also, there's a project, a development that's occurring to the west of Sierra Ridge. And that platting is going on as we speak. And will continue, or propose a portion of 15th Street be extended to the west. And we anticipate that sewer services would be brought up 15th, and then they would curl to the north, which would also allow access to the school system.
Mr. Kessel, when we did the West Gravity Phase 2 project, at that point there was discussions for sewer on this side of the drainage and on this side of the drainage. You'll see, I believe the drainage line is about right here. This project, the West Gravity Phase 2, actually ends right here, although right-of-way was received from the state all the way up to that point. So this project actually ends here in anticipation that the school might build in that area. But since it's on this side of the drainage, actually this sewer line on Sierra Ridge and all this through Prairie Creek was upsized to include this area for the sewer. So that that will be the area that the school, and this will be the drainage through here.
Mr. Jackson?
Can I have you back up just for a second and explain the city contribution on the overpass and the West Business Loop? The overpass, yeah, those two, I guess.
Sure. On the overpass, it's an issue of moving some lines to accommodate
Okay.
that project. It has to do mostly with existing infrastructure.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And what was the other one?
That was the main one.
Oh, okay.
Sean.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Zuroff, Mr. Kubis, did I miss anything in terms of projects? Anything else you'd like to say about ones we reviewed?
I guess what on the landfill acquisition, you went through that pretty quick. I don't know if the planning board was involved in the. We did do a feasibility study on the landfill about a year ago on Baylor versus Lewisville and the dollars it would take to upgrade, and the direction was to go Lewisville. So we do have a lot of information on that and the reasons and the direction we went that. Basically the reason was less labor, lower cost, but we will have to acquire the land to continue with that. And we are in the middle of design of the scale and facilities at the landfill. So I guess if there's any more questions on that, I'd be glad to answer. Also on the brine facility, we have a conceptual design on what we want. It's basically a cold storage facility for the salt and sand, and then it's a small enclosed area to mix the salt and water to make different brine mixtures just by the Public Works facility. And like Mr. Kessel said, we are being approached. In fact, there were some school people there today on if they could purchase brine. We've talked to the airport. We've talked to numerous other entities, developments on how they would like to purchase brine from our facility and the use of that. I guess that's about it, Mr. Kessel.
Okay, thank you. Craig?
Mr. Kessel, Commission, one note I'd like to make on project number 4 on the intersection signalizations. We've listed that, and we've always planned to do as many as possible, up to 10 intersections, based upon a general rule of thumb of $300,000 per signalized intersection, with the intent that we would do roundabouts where they fit and where they made sense. We did get a preliminary estimate on the roundabout for 10th Avenue East and 21st Street, which is what I'd consider a fairly straightforward roundabout, and it was roughly $1 million estimate. There's just more earthwork, more pavement. So the more roundabout improvements we make versus signalized improvements, that number is going to come down rather quickly of the number of intersection improvements we can make. The other roundabout that we're looking at is at 10th Avenue East and Bullard Street, which, as you all know, is really a complicated intersection. It's not a 90-degree intersection by any means. It's going to take even more work, so I would anticipate that roundabout, we don't have an estimate on it yet, but it'll be well in excess of $1 million. So that could eat away quickly at the $3 million we'd hoped to do initially in our planning of $300,000 per each for signalized intersections. So I think it's still a worthy project that, you know, as staff we've met and ranked it very highly or prioritized it very highly. But if we want to accomplish something close to 10 intersections, it might be that some dollars need to be moved around. One other comment I would make, I know it's listed on the spreadsheet, but project number 9, the 15th Street project, is underway already. And that'll be 100% developer contributions for that project between the two adjacent developments. And the Highway 22 landscaping project, like Mr. Kessel said, it was recently bid. We've been given the authority to award the project now from the DOT. We got a really good bid on the project this go around. It was $128,000. We were estimating $215,000. So we hope to award that one and move that project along in 15.
And that's actually on your city commission agenda this evening. So I'd like to talk a little bit about dollars. That was a nice segue that Mr. Kubas provided. You'll notice on the handout that there's a lot of numbers on there. And this financing plan incorporates the 60/40 proposed legislation change that will be considered in this upcoming biennium. It also includes the passage of the surge funding that's also discussed. The surge funding at $50 million for the city of Dickinson. And thankfully, both the governor's Jumpstart program and Senator Wardner's surge funding both have the city of Dickinson in at $50 million. So I'm feeling pretty confident with regard to the advocacy on surge funding. But like I said, this also incorporates a 60/40 split. And again, Senator Wardner's plan and the governor's plan have both endorsed 60/40, at least for the next biennium. You'll notice in ensuing years, we continue to use that 60/40 breakdown and an additional $50 million in surge funding next biennium, in order for this this totality of these projects to come to fruition. And even at that level of funding, we're still anticipating about a $60 to $65 million unfunded projects. So even 60/40 and $50 million of surge does not fully fund all of the anticipated CIP project needs that we have going out to 2018. Now, as you get out there, these become engineers' estimates at best. We don't know what that marketplace is going to do. You know, even providing an estimate of some of these costs is dangerous because of the volatility that we experience in Western North Dakota. 30% inflationary increases annually is not uncommon, and I would hate to predict what those inflationary adjustments will be up and through to 2018. So I just wanted to make a couple comments with regard to the dollars. In other words, we really need 60/40 to go, and we need the $50 million in surge funding to go. And if we can get 60 or 70 in surge funding, that would serve well to finance those unfunded projects that are contained on that list. I think the next thing that we'd like to do is talk about the DOT partnership projects, because we really need you as a commission to weigh in on priorities, not just the ones that we've just listed for you in 2015, but also the DOT's partnership projects as we move out, because these funds need to be advocated for immediately in order to get them on the prioritization. They've already asked, the DOT has asked us what our priorities are, and so we have listed them in this order. The West Business Loop at an exit 59. We would like to see that project in 2015. It is currently not on their project list, so it will not be constructed in 2015. There's no way that they can engineer that project and construct it by 2015. So I would even venture to say that it'd be difficult to do in 2016. Again, we mentioned this project in our presentation with regard to the 2015 projects. The next is interim improvements at exit 61. This middle interstate exchange has been something that's been difficult in Dickinson for quite some time. There's issues with regard to traveling east and then trying to go north. So there are some interim measures that the DOT would like to take, which include some signals to try and get traffic flow to move in that area much better than it does today. That project has been designed. That project is something that I think could be funded improvements in 15 or 2016. The next is the East Business Loop. The East Business Loop would include the Interstate Exchange all the way to down to 10th Avenue East. This project could also be the urbanization of this roadway. So you would see curb and gutter along that path, maybe lighting, pedestrian access, and essentially take the 30th interim bypass approach and extend that all the way down to West Business Loop and to this through the East Business Loop as well. I think that's our intention. There's a lot of access points along this way that make it difficult. A lot of points of ingress and egress that have kind of evolved over the course of time. Not all of those points of ingress and egress are have been authorized. They simply have been built over the course of time. So this is a little bit more difficult project from an engineering standpoint than probably the West Business Loop. We do anticipate that it would end there at 10th Avenue East and Villard, potentially in a roundabout as well. The next is 50th Street grade separation. This is the north-south roadway is 50th Street, and it is the boundary. Most people know it as the boundary between the Dickinson School District and the South Hart School District. It's a good reference for 50th Street. And you can see that it bisects West Ridge development and serves as the current western boundary of the Pinecrest development. This is a really important overpass for us as a city of Dickinson as it relates primarily to fire. We'd like to see a substation. It appears that the next area that would serve our western growth would be a substation on the south side of the interstate, but very near the interstate. Without that overpass, that substation location becomes perilous because we need access to the north side as well. This would be a big project. We'd anticipate in the $30 million range. This 50th is the western boundary of the Barron's Vista development on the south side of the interstate there as well. So they would like to have access, assuming that 50th would be built from 21st down to Old Highway 10. And the next one then is the Highway 22 through town. This kind of goes back to those exit 61 area. Oh, wow! You're in Gladstone, I think. Did you had some improvements to your house you wanted us to? Highway 22 through town has been a point of constriction for traffic trying to go north and south through the community. Some of those exit 61 improvements, if they're all, you know, like I said, that's being engineered. I've seen some of the draft engineering on that, and it does include expanding the roadway north of the interstate, even beyond what's there today. We have 5 lanes there today, and I would anticipate that would actually be expanded to more than 5 lanes in the future. Bringing all of that traffic then through town on the existing roadway serves as a point of constriction, and there's been a project discussion on widening that to a minimum of a 3-lane and potentially 5-lane roadway through town, all the way through to 8th Street on the south side where Loaf and Drug is.
Mr. Kessel?
Yep.
I think one of the projects that we were talking with the DOT about, or was my mouse is dying on me here a little bit. but is actually south of 8th Street to the airport.
Yes, yeah.
I think that's on the sidebar. I think that's the airport project, or extending Highway 22 as a 5-lane section to the airport.
I was going to save that when we talked about
Okay.
utility extensions as well, but since Mr. Kubis has brought that up, that has been the discussion of potentially widening Highway 22 all the way out to the airport and providing city services to the airport. They currently do not have city services, and what I mean by that is they don't have city water, they don't have city sewer. So they're working on a new terminal. You read recently in the Dickinson Press that the passenger count, they have surpassed 50,000 boardings and anticipate the possibility of getting to 60,000 boardings this year. That's a lot of traffic. They hope then by 2017 to have a new terminal constructed at the new airport. We do have in this capital improvements plan projects that would extend water, sewer, and potentially reuse water down to the airport. The reuse water could be used to charge their fire suppression systems, and obviously the potable water for the locations inside the airport itself, and then sewer as well. So it's about it's hard to predict, but we anticipate at least a $20 million, if not $30 million project to bring water and sewer down to the airport itself. But that is another project that we need direction from the City Commission on. The last state-funded project that we have listed is the Southwest Bypass. And that would be taking that Exit 56 location, bringing it on the west side of Patterson Lake, and then connecting it back to Highway 22. Again, it's a high dollar investment. And it would complete the western loop around the community. All of these projects, because of the focus that's been happening in western North Dakota, we've been quite lucky to receive the amount of attention and resources that we've received from the DOT. The 6 projects that I've listed for you today, probably in what I'll call normal conditions, would represent 30 years worth of projects in a normal situation because of their expense. They're simply high dollar projects. So I don't know that even with the focus on western North Dakota that we could get these projects done by 2020. That's what's on your sheet. I think that's really aggressive. In fact, I think it's safe to say that we'd never get that done by 2020. But in order to advocate for the projects that you as a commission see as a priority, we'd like to see you weigh in on these items so that we can make sure that the list is accurate, provide that list to the state DOT, and then advocate for the funding of those projects through the legislative process. Mr. Corton, one of the things that I think would be advantageous for the commission to know is how does all of this infrastructure affect housing units, dwelling units in the community? What does that mean in terms of being able to accommodate the population moving forward? Could you please make a few comments in that regard?
Sure. Can you hear me with that? Is that loud enough? Okay. Just want to make sure. Engineer Kubis, if you could put the layer that shows the four building years starting at 2014 going to 2017. What I've done is I've run through an exercise to determine the total number of dwelling units those projects would represent. That would include not just undeveloped lots, but it would include the subdivisions and the unplatted lots that would be part of it. The first year is 2014, and under 2014, it more or less falls along our existing city boundaries. It is colored in pink. 2014 doesn't go beyond our existing city limits, and the approximate total of dwelling units that would that would provide would be 3,194. If we go to the next year,
Excuse me.
yes.
Could you explain what you just said again?
Okay.
What are we looking at? What's the pink and what's the 3194?
The pink represents the number of dwelling units that could be accommodated with the infrastructure that we're funding for 2014. The state had wanted a breakdown to see how much of the infrastructure that they're funding would represent with respect to dwelling units. So I went through and provided an analysis for that. The pink is showing the area that would be represented for 2014. Most of the subdivisions we're talking about are R1, so a dwelling unit would represent a single lot. However, R2 and R3 zones, you can have higher densities per lots, and I've also included that within the total. I didn't break it down per subdivision, but I have approximately 35 to 40 subdivisions and added up the dwelling units with some additional unplatted lots that would be fill-ins for that. The next total is,
Excuse me, Mr. Catan. So that means 3,200 additional units.
it just represents the total number of dwelling units that are either under construction that would be available or unplatted ones as well.
Right. In addition, that's on top of existing.
Prior years, 2013 and before that, would not be represented as part of
Right.
this total.
Okay.
And then proceeding to the next year of 2015, those numbers go up significantly because we have larger projects. And in 2015, that goes beyond our city limits and includes some of the expansion beyond our urban service area and city limits. Maybe if we lowered the lights, it'd probably show up with the different colors a little bit easier, and I could kind of quickly talk about the total number of potential dwelling units within that. The dwelling units that we have are constrained based upon the infrastructure that would be available for that. The total that I ran into, or the total that came about for 2015 would be 4,798 additional dwelling units. When you're looking at the figure behind you, the blue represents the year of 2015. That is predominantly to the west and to the north of the city. That includes some large acreages that would represent the total number of dwelling units for that.
So again,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Again, Ed, this is really a number that we have infrastructure for. It doesn't have anything to do with who's platting what and what ground might be developed.
That is correct. This would be infrastructure if we're just strictly looking at property and the infrastructure that would be available at this time. This would be approximately the total number of dwelling units that could be built out over a period of years.
Because I'm seeing some tracks there that are unlikely to be developed, even though, okay, I just
Absolutely,
want to make sure I'm
absolutely.
understanding it.
Yes. I'm not putting, other than the infrastructure and the availability that could happen in a best case scenario, I'm not putting a constraint upon the market conditions for it. Then proceeding to 2016, the color that represents for 2016 is green. And if you follow the highlighter, it's to the north. We have some properties, bigger properties to the east, and some on the south side as well that have been placed on hold. The dwelling units for that year would be 3,343. And then for 2017, this would include all of the area that's outside of our current city limits in the expansion, and also would include areas of expansion of our urban service area. That's represented by orange. And the orange represents all four quadrants of the city, to the west, far west, north, east, and then also to the south. And this figure would be roughly 3,953 for a total of those 4 years of 15,288. That would give us some kind of an idea of what the potential dwelling units would represent if we included all of our sewer, water, roads, and other funding mechanisms in order to accommodate development.
What is a dwelling unit, occupancy of a dwelling unit now?
It's difficult to determine at this point. The standard one for the census is 2.3. I would say that we are probably at 2.7. Conservatively, I've used the figure of 2.5. Mr. Kessel?
The Department of Commerce has asked us for these numbers, these dwelling units. We have provided them to them so that they are using those to support the amount of investment that the state is making in Dickinson and in western North Dakota. And I just wanted to emphasize that this is at the conclusion of the prioritized construction that we've proposed. That's what these dwelling units represent. If for whatever reason we're not able to complete some of these projects, that may mean that some of these this land would not be developed in the nature that that we hope it would be. But so I think what we're looking for now is your feedback with regard to this list of prioritizations, and if we could start with the 2015 projects. You know, we've used, as I said, the policy that was created by this commission to come up with these staff recommendations, but we'd really like to hear your input with regard to our recommendation.
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner.
Mr. Kessel, I'd like to back up just 1 second. We finished on the future Southwest truck bypass. And I know we touched on this a couple meetings ago. Mr. Jackson brought it up. But what effect is the railroad spurs in Richardson going to have that would bump up our northeast truck route that you do have on the as the next project right after our southwest, right northeast, right there? Have we looked at any numbers into that? Are these trucks going to go north at Richardson, or?
Commissioner Steiner, I've not yet seen any plans with regard to the truck routes as it relates to that expansion. This route specifically is a difficult one because it doesn't follow traditional roadway lines, and so not that it can't be done, but certainly it would be an engineering challenge to get that done. That would be probably the next project that we'd like to see you prioritize, and certainly can be within the mix. We're putting 40th Street in now. I think the expectation is that this roadway would follow the existing bypass, so it'd actually be north of 40th Street, and then follow a pathway somewhat similar as to what's proposed on the board. But if you, as a commission, see that as a higher priority than a southwest boundary or a 50th, we'd certainly like to hear that as well. It's a good point.
I think it would be interesting to contact somebody from those railroads as what their estimate of the number of truckloads in and out of that a day would be. That may become a busier route than our southwest route on Highway 22.
Commissioner Steiner, if I could, I have spoke with the DOT, and they have traffic operations reports from both of those operations. I think from the DOT's perspective, they were low volume generators. Of course, if all of the trucks were coming through Dickinson, say on Highway 22, it might be a significant amount of trucks for us. They don't know where those trucks are going, other than they're going to hit the state highway system, whether it's Highway 8 north of Richardson or I-94. I would presume that some of them will go north of Dickinson. A lot of them might go north on Highway 8 or north on Highway 85. We don't really know that. I think it's depending on what those facilities are ultimately going to service. It's going to be dependent on where the need is in the oil field. If it's frac sand, sure. just depends where the wells are being drilled. But right now, I think 300 trucks a day at full capacity was the number that sticks in my head from the DOT. And if they get any new numbers from those rail facilities, I'll be happy to pass them along.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kessel, the 2016 projects that you have listed in black on our handout, do you have them listed in the priority, or are they a priority listing right now?
President Johnson, no, they are not. We have not prioritized any projects beyond 2015. Those are simply grouped by project category. So all those black are street and road projects, but they contain no prioritization at all.
Okay, and because those are black doesn't necessarily mean those are state DOT projects.
No, not at all. That just simply means they have a roadway component in them.
Okay, but you're asking for feedback on the major state DOT projects.
Yeah, we would like.
So we don't have a list in front of us of the same priorities that you just went through on the screen.
You do. It's on the page 2, just by the 2016 projects on the right-hand side. It's in kind of in the margins there.
On the
If you go way over on the right side of the page, almost to the edge, it says project and then year, and it lists. It's in rather small print, but those are the state projects.
And those are the priorities you gave them to us in?
Yes, and I would like to mention that we like to present recommendations to you based on consensus. We've got a great team, and we're able to do that almost at all times. This was difficult. This process was not. Although these are the priorities, some people would rank them differently. The East Business Loop, for instance, some people rank that higher than the prioritization that you see before you. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to have some of you as commissioners rank that higher as well. But as a group, this was the prioritization that we came up with.
Sean, can you briefly tell us, I'm familiar with how the DOT has asked for our priorities in the past, but that was before this large amount of discretionary oil money that the DOT now has. So I've kind of lost track of that. Are they asking you for both federal aid projects and oil projects on separate lists, or how are they, what are they asking for now?
I think I'm going to defer that to Engineer Kubis. He actually received the request list itself, the actual letter. So,
Commissioner Jackson, we did just recently, I want to say within the last 10 days, get the solicitation letter from the DOT. In that letter, they don't differentiate between the traditional urban roads federal funding and urban regional federal funding, or state oil impact funding on your urban or regional system. They simply ask for our 5-year plan for the urban roads projects, which traditionally was federal aid, and I think those would continue to be federal aid, and a 5-year plan for urban regional projects. And I think what we're looking at here are really the urban regional projects, the bigger ones that are on the state system, on the business loops, the interchanges, things of that nature. So they don't differentiate between the funding stream. I think they probably make that decision balancing it out on a statewide or a district level. They're just looking for the projects.
Okay. Well, as far as the, what might be DOT projects, personally, I think we have to put our interchanges at the top, and I think all 3 of them. I think that's what I would do. And especially on the west side, I'd put exit 59 separate from the West Business Loop. I think we have some work we need to do on 59, or if we don't now, it's going to be very, very shortly. So I think that's really important. I think it's far more important than the West Business Loop itself. I think the East Business Loop, I would put as a higher priority than the West Business Loop. I've always felt that way. I think it's becoming dangerous out there, and we've really got not a bad highway on the west end of town. So I would put the interchanges first, especially 59. I shouldn't say that because 61 is so important too. But Highway 22 through town has got to be addressed. We've got to get that in there somehow. I've always said that I don't think we should proceed one step with Highway 22 unless we're ready to publicly accept the fact that parking will be eliminated. Because if you go back 30 years in Dickinson, that's been a hot political item. And until we can say that we're ready to eliminate parking on Highway 22, we shouldn't go forward. I think we should eliminate parking and go forward with Highway 22. That raises the question of the underpass, because that changes the scope of that project tremendously. So do we think it's worth it to do a project to Villard? And it probably is, even though we would still have a bottleneck at the underpass, and recognizing that may end up being a later project than Highway 22 to Villard.
Mr. Jackson, question. You would still have the east and west business loop projects ahead of the Highway 22 project, would you not?
I'm not so sure I'd have the west business loop ahead of Highway 22. I don't see the west business loop becoming the traffic issue that Highway 22 has become and the east business loop has become.
I can agree with you on the interchanges and the east business loop. I'm not so sure I agree with you on tackling the Highway 22 through the heart of the city.
And I agree
Yeah.
that
I
that's,
mean,
that's worth
when we
debate.
talk about a project that not only would be costly, but it would be so disruptive.
You're talking about Highway 22?
Yes.
Yeah.
To my way of thinking, Highway 22 in the heart of the city is about the last major project I think I would tackle. I'd try to get all the other ones done, or many of the other ones done first.
So the traffic has somewhere to fold before.
Well, provide alternatives to Highway 22 north and south.
Lessen the traffic, lessen the impact before you put it into place.
Well, if you're going to do Highway 22, I would agree that you should try to do it right, meaning it's going to have to be quite a bit wider than what it is today. You have to deal with the underpass, and you either have to go back under that railroad, or if you do a bridge over the top of it, that has a lot of implications. I mean, it's going to be so disruptive. I would think before you tackle that, you want to have all of your other infrastructure, your terms of alternative routes in place. And someone else should be mayor.
I think we hit the crux of the issue.
Probably right there.
I do have a question for the commission. Where do you see, in recognition of a 3-minute time schedule here, 50th Street overpass in relation to the other projects? Is that after the West Business Loop? Is that before? Commissioner Jackson, I think I've heard you pretty clearly that the interstate exchanges along with the East Business Loop are a higher priority. But where do you drop 50th in?
I would put it further back. The day will come, it'll be very important, but it's not now. And it's not in the next year or two, I don't think.
Okay.
I actually think Highway 22 to the airport could be of much higher priority than that, just especially if the airport gets its funding and gets developed.
Okay.
And another thing they're gonna have to really look at is they're at capacity right now with their sewer system, as big as it is. And probably over capacity. And we're gonna really have to look at the water and sewer going out there. We're gonna do that highway. And it'll show the city's too commitment to this new airport.
And we do, just for your informational purposes, we do have those projects in our CIP plan, I think in 2017, to extend services down to the airport itself. Yeah, the wastewater pipe and lift station for the airport is a 2017 project. And it's got a dollar amount there, but it's more for a placeholder. I'm not sure that we're prepared to give you a really firm number on the extension of water and sewer to the airport itself.
In terms of the 2015 priorities, the projects that Mr. Kessel went through, does anybody see any change in priorities from what they gave us? I mean, those are projects pretty well known to us. They've been,
I agree with that. I think it looks pretty good. What I wish I had a better handle on was our overall financial situation. You know, I'm seeing this
Right.
column on the right side, this red column. It's a good thing it's red. But I've lost track of where we are totally with our debt, with servicing that debt. And I look at the list of projects and I think, you know, makes sense. You have a 0 on the exit 56 servicing, so I assume that means that's subject to discussion yet. But otherwise, good projects. But can we afford it? I guess that's the bottom line. Can we afford them? Even though they're good projects.
you're not, in this running debt total, you're not carrying the existing SRF debt for the wastewater.
That's what it
Wow.
appears.
Right, that's correct. This is, yeah, those,
This is on top of debt that for prior project.
correct. And I can give you a better picture of our debt at a later time, so that you completely understand it, along with the revenue streams that we've committed to pay down that debt. I'll commit to doing that for you in a January city commission meeting, so that you have a better idea.
I
Mr.
think
President, there is one project I would like to see moved from 16 to 15, and that's the quiet rail, but I'm not sure that's possible with the pace of the railroad.
That's the concern, is the overpass. We won't get credit for doing the quiet rail until that overpass is done at
Yeah.
States.
Okay,
Yep.
then ignore that comment.
And of course, you know, just in the past, not too many weeks, we've seen quite a drop in oil prices. So even if all the legislation is passed as the way it's been proposed here prior to this session, we wouldn't receive near as much money from the formula.
That's correct.
Yeah, you haven't adjusted down to $56 oil, I assume.
I have not. This was based on $75 oil at 1.2 million barrels per day production. So it would have to be factored down. And you're right, it's the 60/40. The formula, the 45.8 million that you see there, that's the number that would be affected. The surge funding is through the Strategic Investment Fund. Those dollars primarily are in existence. So that has a less impact upon the existing situation with oil prices. But the formula dollars would have to be decreased if we see an extended period of time of depressed prices.
But I mean, I think it's you know, good planning on our part to have our priorities, but as Mr. Jackson has pointed out, we have to get a real good handle on our expenditures here and assume reduced revenue projections, not only from the state, but if we do see drilling rigs drop 25 to 50%, you know, that's going to impact other city taxes like sales tax receipts. So,
Hospitality,
everything,
all of,
yeah.
all of them.
yeah, so we have to, I think, you know, I know we set a budget for 2015, but we have to begin thinking about an alternative budget if prices stay at these lower levels throughout the year, and we do see curtailments on the E&P side.
President Johnson, if I may, on the sewer itself, on the SRF, we did do a sewer rate study and a water rate study. So in the sewer rate study, we did adjust the rates to include the SRF debt. Of course, that doesn't, you know, population projections slow down, that'll be different. But the sewer rates do include the SRF debt load.
Servicing the debt load doesn't change the amount of debt. That's
And you'll be acting tonight, hopefully, on the fee resolution, which does the exact same thing for the water side. And it does include the increase that Southwest Water has proposed as well.
well, we have a 2:30 that we have to go to, but let's see if we can sum this up on those major DOT projects. I think I didn't hear any disagreement with what Mr. Jackson said in terms of concentrating on the exits on the interchange. The east business loop, a higher priority than the west business loop. But then where it gets to be, well, now just that 50th Street grade separation, a lower priority for now. Have to watch the airport development because that may drive Highway 22 south. And then Highway 22 inside the city, let's just say there's a mixed reaction to that priority.
Well, I have a suggestion, and I agree, it should be mixed. That's a tough call. But let's ask the DOT to get its preliminary done. Let's do the, you know, would they do a concept report phase, or, you know, that early phase that probably will take a year to 2 years, but it's not going to construction, to get that moving. The environmental reviews, the right-of-way reviews, that kind of thing.
So in summary, what I heard is exit 59, exit 61, East Business Loop, then Highway 22, underpass, West Business Loop, 50th, and then throwing in Highway 22 South, probably before Highway 22 through town. Does that summarize it fairly well?
Did you say underpass?
Yes.
Do you see that as a separate project from Highway 22 going downtown?
We didn't originally, but you know, it might be a interesting concept, because I think we're also separating exit 59 from the West Business Loop. We had proposed that as one project, but those are rather expensive projects. Together, that's probably a $50 million project if you combine 59 and the West Business Loop.
Is there anything else before we adjourn this meeting?
The only thing that I would say is thank you for your time tonight. The fire department does have their new Quint vehicle. They're rather proud of that. It's available for review in between our two meetings today. So if you want to take a peek, you can.
We are going to the West Dickinson, right?
Yes.
So would there be a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. We're adjourned. We'll take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll begin with the West Dickinson meeting.